They say your wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. For me, it was the day I realized the parents I'd spent my whole life trying to please just didn't exist. It wasn't some dramatic, movie-style revelation. It was just a quiet, gut-wrenching feeling that settled in my stomach as I stood there in my dress, listening to my wedding coordinator ask for the third time if we should hold the ceremony. They weren't late. They weren't stuck in traffic. They just weren't coming. And the reason they gave, when I finally heard it, was so small, so insulting, it broke a part of me I didn't even know was still fragile. To really get why their absence was the last straw, you have to understand my childhood. I have an older sister, Sarah. And to my parents, Sarah wasn't just their firstborn, she was their masterpiece. The golden child, the straight-A student, the one who could do no wrong. And me? I was the other one. The quiet one, the less sparkly one. I was just there. Growing up was this constant, low-key competition that I was always losing. Her dance recitals were mandatory family events, my soccer games were optional. Her report cards got framed, mine got a nod and a, "That's nice, dear." It was 1,000 tiny paper cuts that all sent the same message: my achievements were secondary, my milestones didn't matter as much. Of course, my parents would have denied it. They would have sworn they loved us equally, but their actions told a totally different story. All their time, their energy, their excitement, it was all reserved for Sarah. When I met my husband, Mark, it was the first time I felt like I was someone's first choice. He saw me, not Sarah's little sister. He celebrated my tiny wins and held me when I felt insecure. Planning our wedding was so exciting, but I can't lie, it was also filled with this old, familiar dread. Every decision, from the venue to the guest list, felt like I was begging for an amount of attention I wasn't sure I was allowed to have. We decided on a small, intimate wedding right in our own backyard with just our closest friends and family. It meant a lot to us. We were getting married on our 4th anniversary, a date that was incredibly special. When I told my parents the date, they seemed fine with it. They smiled, nodded, and promised they'd be there. And I let myself believe them. I let myself hope that for this one day, this incredibly important day, I would finally be the priority. Then, a week before the wedding, they called. There was a problem. Sarah, who lives across the country, had decided to surprise them with a visit that exact same weekend. And she had planned a special shopping spree for them on the day of my wedding. Their request was just absurd. They asked if I could postpone my wedding. Just move the whole thing, the caterers, the guests, the entire celebration of my marriage, because my sister wanted to go shopping. I explained, calmly at first, that we couldn't. It wasn't just about the money or the special date, it was the principle of the thing. I was asking them to choose me. Just this once. The call ended with a vague, "We'll see what we can do," which I now realize was just their coward's way of saying no. The morning of my wedding was a blur of happy, nervous energy. My friends were there, my bridesmaids were a storm of hairspray and laughter, and Mark's family had welcomed me as one of their own from day one. His mom helped me with my dress, her eyes tearing up as she told me how beautiful I looked. It was a warmth I'd always wanted from my own mother. But this knot of anxiety was just tightening in my stomach. It was half an hour before the ceremony. No sign of my parents. I called. No answer. Mark called. It went straight to voicemail. My maid of honor tried. Nothing. With every missed call, the reality got colder and heavier. Our guests were seated, the music was playing, and the sun was starting to set. Our wedding coordinator, a kind but no-nonsense woman, asked if we wanted to wait. And in that moment, looking at Mark's steady, supportive face, I knew I couldn't. I couldn't put our lives on hold, waiting for people who had already made their choice. I couldn't start my marriage by putting the people who always put me last, first. So, I took a deep breath and said, "No. We're starting." Walking down that grassy aisle in our backyard was one of the loneliest and most freeing moments of my entire life. I saw the faces of our friends and Mark's family, all of them beaming. I saw the incredible man waiting for me, his eyes just full of love. But I also saw two empty chairs in the front row. They were like a gaping hole that screamed their absence. It was a physical symbol of the emotional void they'd created my whole life. The ceremony itself was beautiful. We said our own vows, and for those few minutes, I managed to push the hurt away and just focus on the new family I was creating. It was this perfect little bubble of joy. But the second we were pronounced husband and wife and turned to face everyone, the sight of those empty chairs brought it all crashing back. The grief was just immense, not just for them missing the moment, but for the death of the relationship I'd always hoped we could have. This wasn't just a scheduling conflict, it was a statement about my worth in their eyes. A betrayal that was louder than any wedding bells. The reception was a weird mix of happy and sad. Our friends and Mark's family wrapped us in so much love that it almost made me forget. But people noticed. There were quiet whispers and looks of pity. I spent most of the night with a smile plastered on my face, dodging questions about where my parents were. They finally showed up just as the party was ending. They strolled in like they were a few minutes late to a casual cookout, and my mother was holding a shopping bag. The sight of that bag sent a fresh wave of rage through me. There was no emergency. No catastrophe. Just a choice. My dad looked uncomfortable, but my mom was immediately on the defensive. "Well, what were we supposed to do?" she said when I confronted them, her voice full of excuses. "Sarah was only in town for a few days. Your wedding was just a small backyard thing, we figured it would be easy to reschedule." Her words hit me harder than them not showing up. A small backyard thing, my commitment to the man I loved, the beginning of our life together, was just a trivial event to them. They didn't see the months of planning, or how much it meant, or how deeply they would hurt me. They just saw an inconvenience that got in the way of their preferred plans. There was no apology. No remorse. Just excuses and the expectation that I would understand, like I always had. In the days that followed, the family drama exploded. Some relatives called, furious for me. Others tried to be peacemakers, telling me to forgive and forget for the sake of family. My mother, meanwhile, started a campaign to paint herself as the victim, telling everyone I was being dramatic. The story she spun was that I had put them in an impossible position. This kind of emotional gaslighting wasn't new, but this time felt different. This time, it was public. A friend of mine, who was a guest, posted this beautiful photo of Mark and me at the altar. And there in the background, clear as day, were the two empty chairs. The post kind of went viral in our town, and suddenly, my parents were facing public criticism they couldn't control. And that's when their tone changed. The apologies finally started rolling in, but they felt so hollow. It was obvious they weren't sorry for hurting me, they were just embarrassed that they got caught. Look, my story is just one, but I know things like this happen in families all the time, usually behind closed doors. If you've ever felt like you weren't enough for your family or have struggled with these kinds of conflicts, hit that subscribe button and share your experience in the comments. It really does help to know you aren't alone in this. This whole nightmare was like a painful, clarifying fire. It burned away any last bit of hope I had for the relationship I wanted with my parents and forced me to see the one I actually had. What they did on my wedding day wasn't just a one-time screw-up, it was the grand finale to a lifetime of being treated like an afterthought. It was the final piece of evidence I needed to accept that I could not keep setting myself on fire just to keep them warm. Cutting them out of my life wasn't a rash decision. It was a painful, necessary act of self-preservation. It came after weeks of sleepless nights, so many tears, and endless talks with Mark. I was grieving the parents I wished I had, while realizing I had to protect myself from the parents I actually got. So, I stopped answering their calls. I blocked their numbers. I sent one final, clear message telling them I needed space and would not be in contact. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Estrangement is a weird kind of grief. You're mourning people who are still alive. But along with all that pain came this incredible sense of peace. My life is quieter now, but it's also more real. My family isn't defined by blood anymore, it's defined by choice. My family is my husband, who shows me every day what unconditional love feels like. It's his parents, who have stepped in to fill a void I didn't even know was so huge. It's my friends, who showed up for me without a second thought. These are the people who celebrate me, who respect me, and who actually see me. I don't know if I'll ever have a relationship with my parents again. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened, it's about not letting it ruin my future. For now, I'm just focused on the beautiful family I'm building, one based on respect and real love. My wedding day may have started with a heartbreaking loss, but it ended with the most important gain of my life, a life where I am finally the main character in my own story.